Hi, the last days of Cleopatra, the dramatic end of Egypt's last queen. Imagine standing inside a magnificent palace in Alexandria. Outside, the greatest empire on earth is closing in. Roman soldiers march ever closer, and the fate of an entire civilization rests on the shoulders of one woman. This is the story of the last days of Cleopatra VII, the final queen of ancient Egypt, whose death marked the end of a kingdom that had lasted for thousands of years. For centuries, Cleopatra has been remembered as one of history's most fascinating women. She has often been portrayed as a legendary beauty who captivated powerful Roman leaders. But the truth is far more remarkable. Cleopatra was highly educated, spoke multiple languages, understood politics better than many of her rivals, and fought tirelessly to preserve Egypt's independence in a world dominated by Rome. In 31 BC, everything changed. Cleopatra and her ally and lover, Mark Antony, faced the forces of Octavian in the famous Battle of Actium. It was one of the most important naval battles in history. Their fleet was defeated, forcing them to flee back to Egypt. Although they escaped alive, they knew the Roman Republic's future ruler would never stop hunting them. Back in Alexandria, Cleopatra refused to surrender. Instead, she began preparing for every possible outcome. She strengthened the city's defenses, gathered supplies, and even considered escaping to distant lands. According to ancient historians, she explored the possibility of transporting her ships across the desert to reach the Red Sea, hoping to rebuild her power far from Rome, but the plan failed before it could succeed. Meanwhile, Octavian steadily advanced toward Egypt. His victories convinced many of Antony's supporters to abandon him. Loyal generals switched sides, and morale collapsed. Every day brought more bad news. The once powerful Roman commander who had conquered kingdoms now found himself isolated. Cleopatra, however, remained calm. She understood that her greatest weapon was no longer her army. It was diplomacy. She secretly opened communication with Octavian, hoping she could negotiate a future for herself and, more importantly, for her children. She knew that if Egypt was destined to fall, perhaps her family could survive. As the Roman army approached Alexandria in 30 BC, Antony made one final attempt to resist. His remaining soldiers fought bravely, but they were hopelessly outnumbered. Many surrendered without a fight. Others deserted before the battle even began. The city's fate was sealed. Then came one of history's greatest misunderstandings. According to ancient accounts, Antony received false news that Cleopatra had taken her own life. Devastated by grief and believing he had lost everything, he chose to end his own life. He fell upon his sword, but the wound was not immediately fatal. Moments later, he discovered the heartbreaking truth. Cleopatra was still alive. She had taken refuge inside her mausoleum, a magnificent tomb she had prepared for herself. Antony's loyal followers carried the dying general to the building. Because the doors had been sealed, Cleopatra and her servants reportedly pulled him inside through a window using ropes. The reunion was tragic. Antony died in Cleopatra's arms, ending one of history's most famous love stories. Whatever history says about their political ambitions, there is little doubt that the final moments they shared were filled with sorrow and despair. Now, Cleopatra stood completely alone. Octavian entered Alexandria as the undisputed victor. He ordered Cleopatra to be captured alive. His plan was clear. He intended to display the defeated queen in his triumphal parade through Rome, proving to the world that Egypt had finally fallen under Roman control. For Cleopatra, this fate was unbearable. She had ruled as Pharaoh. She had negotiated with Julius Caesar, shared power with Mark Antony, and considered herself the equal of kings and emperors. To become a prisoner, marched through Roman streets in chains, would destroy everything she had fought to protect. Although Octavian treated her with respect during their meetings, Cleopatra quickly realized that he had no intention of restoring her throne. Egypt would become a Roman province, and her reign was over. Ancient writers describe how Cleopatra spent her final days arranging her affairs, comforting her children, and preparing for death. She requested permission to visit Antony's tomb one last time. There, she reportedly mourned the man who had shared both her greatest dreams and her greatest defeat. Soon afterward, Cleopatra returned to her palace. What happened next remains one of history's greatest mysteries. The most famous story claims that an Egyptian cobra, hidden inside a basket of figs, was secretly brought to the queen. The venomous snake supposedly bit Cleopatra, allowing her to die quickly beside her loyal servants Iris and Charmian, who also chose